Hi, Joe Cerrone.
And Al Rosen.
Welcome to CAD 116 and our weekly online meeting. Al, would you like to talk to him?
Today? Correct, Joe?
Go ahead, Al. You can lead off the talk.
It's okay. I was going to say we're going over to Module 3 today. Video how to do your assignment is the first thing up there. It has step-by-step instructions onto it. And if you see there's color coding onto it, we keep talking about that. Green is our AutoCAD or assignments. On top of it, right below it, it's a blue. And right below that should be a magenta, but I don't know why it worked back to blue. It should be magenta for the PowerPoint. So if you click on step-by-step over here, it's there. And then right down below, if you're having some problems with connecting to Microsoft Office or one of those products, and you have a Mac and you can't get the AutoCAD correctly done, or it doesn't look the same, you can go here and go VPN into it. And you have Chromebook, Macintosh, or Windows, and you exactly have what we have on our screen.
Right. The VPN works really well. And now that everybody's kind of getting, not everybody is, but I find this is an excellent way to go as we get everything kind of troubleshooted throughout the course. Here's the assignments that we're going to be covering. And so we're going to be doing these general design assignments. And so there's 5 more plates. And then there's 2 other plates or 2 other drawings. And so again, we start off with a general design project, which is just general design, how to work with CAD, drawing commands and modify commands, and then how to work on a mechanical drawing and how to work on an architectural drawing. If we take a quick look at those drawings, this is our architectural example, and it's just a elevation of a house. And then if I come back here, crazy. Don't know why my computer doesn't want to do it now. There we go. Some of my coasters. I have a thing for coasters. So here is our plates from the first exercise. And you can just continue on the plates, or you can just create a new one. Let's see where I have mine. There they are. And so plate number 6 will be this drawing with these circular geometries and with these arcs. And we've got the video already set up for you on that. But as you go through, what you want to do with this drawing is you just want to get used to using the draw commands here. And so we have these different draw commands. We're working a lot with arcs and circles and with being able to trim those arcs and circles. And then you can also look at more efficient ways to do these drawings. There's no reason you have to draw all of these circles. You could draw one of them and then copy it and work with other things that make the drawing more efficient. And then as we look at this key plate exercise, this is just a straight mechanical drawing exercise, where we'll put this drawing together. I think it asks you to do the right side view. I don't have that right side view in here, so it doesn't necessarily have to be done since we don't have it in this video. But essentially, it's just this rectangular shape with these holes. If I were to go through and tweak it a little bit, I would say make sure that the center marks are in the center line layer. It does kind of do this a little bit where they've automated the center mark application under the annotation with this button right here. And so we'll just go ahead and use it like that. But layering conventions should be set up properly. And so if I come back here to my home tab, and then I go and put this on the proper layer, center lines should be on center line layers, dimensions should be on dimension line layers. And then you should keep these drawings, like this one here has too many decimal places of accuracy. The more decimal places of accuracy, the more it costs. And so you can click on it and go to precision, and I can dial this down like that. Now it's a reasonable cost because it doesn't have so many zeros at the end of it. We also have the videos for you on those exercises. And so if we come back here, so here's our drawings, and then here's our, our videos. And so here's the video for the 5 plates. And then we have videos of the other drawings under the module content. And so if we go here to content, and then we look at chapter 3, not sure why I have some of it not showing. There it goes. Here's our PowerPoint. And so chapter 3 goes through using appropriate values when responding to prompts. Viewing methods. Viewing would be things like zoom and pan. Using the line command. Describing several point entry methods. Point entry methods would be like absolute coordinates or relative polar coordinates. Undo, erase. Drawing aids, things like OSNAP. And so as we go through and we take a look at the textbook, what we're talking about is how to use different units. So on a drawing that has architectural units, you're able to input the coordinates in feet and inches and with fractions. You can cancel out of your commands by hitting escape. I always hit escape a couple of times to clear the grips and things like that. And then your coordinate system. As you start to work with these systems, remember everything has vector data assigned to it. And that's why we're able to do 3D printing and prototyping from these different drawings, because everything is tied into the user coordinate system, which is our X, Y, and Z axis. Basic viewing is just zooming. For years, AutoCAD just came up with new ways to display things. But ever since they came out with the scroll wheel mouse, that's really all you need is just the mouse to change the panning and the zooming by turning the wheel and by pushing the wheel. And then as we get into these coordinate systems, absolute, relative, and relative polar, they've made those things easier to use also. And so as we start to work with these different drawings, so for example, on a mechanical drawing, if we come back here to the model space and we look at this drawing, and if I say Z for zoom, A for all, and if I turn on my grid display, and I'm going to dial my grid display down to 0 so I can see the limits. And it doesn't seem to be set up properly. We'll come back to that. But what I'm talking about when we put in coordinates and points is that if I wanted to go and draw something like a line, and he wants to know the first point, if I say 0, 0, enter, that's where my origin is located. And so this drawing, Z for zoom, A for all, is way far away from the origin. And I could move that if I wanted to, depending on how we work with these different technologies. For example, if I was to work with this on a machine, 0 is very important because 0 is where the machine knows the home location is. And so tooling is set off of a 0 coordinate system. And so I'm going to move this so that it's on my coordinate system. But if I were to say give me a line from 0, 0, bam. Now I'm right there and I'm able to then input those coordinates. It's very mechanical. It's very machine, robotic. It's better to use this polar O snap. And so as I draw a line, I can just click and you can see I get this green tracking line, and that's what's known as direct distance. So as long as your polar button is on, it works super good because it's like a tape measure. I can just track it in the direction and then I can type in 10, bam. And now that's a 10-inch line. If I hover over the grips, it'll tell me that. Now, when you work with an architectural drawing, the units are set different. And so when I look at the units for this mechanical drawing, the units are supposed to be set for decimal. So somehow this drawing isn't quite right. But either way, if I go and I look at the other drawing for my architectural drawing, this one will be set for architectural units. And so if I drew a line like this, you'll see that it's tracking out in feet and inches. And so as I use my polar there, I can say 7 feet, 3 inches, enter, and that will be a 7 foot, 3 inch line. And so these are the differences between setting up a drawing with decimal units and with architectural units. And the old school way of doing it was to use these polar coordinates where you'd say at 2, 2. Nobody uses relative. Everybody uses polar coordinates, or what I would call relative polar, where you say at 2 inches, angle 45. But remember, there's a better way to do that now with the polar button. You just turn it on and set up those angles. But every once in a while, you'll get something that's going to be at 38 degrees or some number that doesn't work. And you'll have to say at to angle 38. And so we went through last week and went through some of the polar coordinates with this number 1, where you can go through and put in absolute coordinates for each of these values, and then it will put a point at each location. We like to work with the grid. We like to enable those things through our drafting settings. Drafting settings will control things like snap and grid, polar tracking, and object snap. Here's ortho. Ortho means straight. It'll draw your line straight. Object snap. Object snap is used quite a bit. And so as we look at these different O-snap exercises, what we're looking at, and this is some Oakton CAD things, is be able to draw a line from the center of the circle to the midpoint of a line. Be able to draw a line tangent to an arc to the midpoint. Tangent, tangent. And so I'm not sure if I have this one open. Let's see. No, but if I went to Oakton CAD, and this is how Al and I used to run everything before they got the D2L, and I go into my 116 module 3, here's an O-snap exercise. And this is just bonus. This is just, something that will help you develop your CAD skills. And so we took this from a different textbook, but if I go and I look at my Oakton CAD website again, if I can find it, there it is. Move my people, module 3 somehow. There's actually an O-snap drawing in here. There's me with my cousin Bert. And I did my first video back a long time ago. Let's see, where's that drawing? There it is. Oh, snap. And so as we work with these, let's make that a darker color. We can go through and we can draw a line. And I like to use shift right mouse click because it makes the O-snap I choose the strongest. And so I can say from the center, and then I hover, acquire, and then to the midpoint. Midpoint is already on, so it'll go right there. And then if I go, let's just see why I have the worst colors in the world here for these. There we go. And then as we go and create these other lines, I can say tangent, hover, and then I can go to midpoint. And so these are just construction techniques. You can also go through and just run a running object snap on these. And so with a running object snap set for tangent, and sometimes you just have to turn off the other ones because they'll get in the way. But I can go through here and I can hover and see, this is what I mean. It'll grab other O snaps, not necessarily the ones I want. So I have to turn them off. And then as I go through and I kind of glide the mouse over, now I'll get my tangency points. And you can see AutoCAD is kind of fluid. It's got that right mouse, left mouse kind of technique. The toughest one is this one with apparent intersection. And I like it because as we go through, you'll use this a lot. It's a really good technique. And so what you need to do is you need to turn on apparent intersection, and you have to turn on extension as well. And so some of these kind of go together. And so when you work with them, you have to do what's called swiping. And so if I said I wanted a line from this apparent intersection, where these two lines would meet, to this apparent intersection, what I would do is I'd say, give me the line command, and then I would track it. Bam, there's the apparent intersection. And then I do the same thing here. And so it's sort of like an Xbox game where you have to practice your moves, or you can't do a Mortal Kombat attack. And so glide, hover, acquire, and then track it out. So there's a lot of technique in chapter 3 that we're just starting to pick up on. You can use the undo command, window selections, all different types, from a blue window to a green window to this lasso selection. And then that's our chapter review. And so that's a quick review of the chapter 3 information. And then when we look at the exercises are really straightforward this week. As we go through and we work with the plates, make sure that you create the geometry and that you use the snap and the grid appropriately. Lines should all be touching. They should all be endpoint to endpoint, or like this line here is it's at a grid snap setting. So when it's set to a grid, it's perfect. It's accurate, provided that the lines are on that grid. And so that's our plates. As we start to look at these other plates, go through and create the constructions for those. These are the first 5 plates. Here's 6. And then as we go into some of these other ones, I have to take a look for where all the rest of them went. And here's our key plate. This is a straight mechanical exercise. We can go to our B size title block. Remember, when you put in these drawings, here's my title block. If I unlock that, Z for zoom, A for all, it should be here somewhere. I'm not sure where it is. There it is. It's over on the side. And I probably have 2 viewports on here. That's why this is kind of goofing up. And so if I double click outside of it, let's erase one of them. And I erased the wrong one, apparently. Or, I see what happened here. What happened was the student who did this exercise drew it in paper space. And then if I go in here to model space and I set the zoom scale here, 1:1, now it fits. Okay. And so you dial in the scale and lock it. This is the way that we would create these geometries. And then everything should line up from view to view. You should also have proper line types and line weights. This can be a bit of an issue where the dim scale and the LT scale doesn't display properly. So if we take LT, PS LT scale, and we set this to 0 and then regen, it usually fixes it. And so just one of those tips and tricks because in model space, it's correct. But when I had that in paper space, without the PSLT scale, it was not correct. So that's the mechanical. You can do either this drawing or you can do the other one, which was the elevation drawing right here. This drawing, we added some other elements to it. So we added a hatch pattern for the grid. Other little tips and tricks that you can do on this. Let's see how my layers are set up if I'm able to turn some of these off. So this one here is on a layer for bricks, which I'll turn off. And this one here is on a layer for bricks hatch pattern. And that's the way you want to work with these, because you can go through and turn these layers off now and then work with the geometry underneath it. So for example, when I did the window here, they didn't tell me how far the panes were apart. They just told me it was 10 feet, 2 inches. This is a great opportunity to use the divide command, where I can divide this into 4 equal parts. But again, to be able to use that, we want to be able to set up our point style. So we need a point style like this. And then I usually set these in absolute sizes. And so I'll say, okay. And then I would use something like divide. And I would click on this right here, and I would divide that into 4. And then I would get a point at each point. And so this is perfect. This one was divided. And then you can see, saves you the calculations for being able to figure that out. And so if I wanted to go through and see, well, what was that? Well, that measurement was from here to the node. And that's the dimension for that. And then when we go through and we use these hatch patterns on here, if I were to go into my layer properties and I just make a quick new layer, and I'll make that one active, and I'll give it a color. What you would want to do is to be able to do something like the brick pattern. Now, we might get some trouble with the dimensions cutting into it, but as we go through and we create pattern, when we work with these, if I take this and I hover and click inside of the boundary, I can attach that brick pattern. And then a lot of times what I'll do is I'll turn that pattern off, and then I'll be able to do the same thing with the other one. And so here's my layer 1 that I just created. Turn it off. And then if I had a different layer, I'll just re-enable the hatch pattern that I used to have. And then mine, of course, I chose the same color, but if I go back here and change it to something else, now you can see those. And so these are just techniques. You know, we put in some blocks for that. And then when we get to the elevation drawing for it, we want you to, again, set the scale of the viewport. So I can dial this down a little bit. 1/4 of an inch equals a foot, seems to fit perfectly. And then I'll lock that. Okay, so that's a review of the assignments. If I come back here to our main splash page, we can take a look at our exercises. And some reason there we go. So there's our PowerPoint. Here's our video tutorials. Here's Joe's mechanical. Here's the architectural. And there's another one for a bonus assignment, the stair plan. I'll see if I can find that and put that back in there. Here's some house elevation with some landscape links. And so if you want to get some additional content, you can go through and you can click on these links here and you can get CAD blocks. And so a lot of these blocks are available to download. And so here's some trees. So you don't have to draw it. There's quite a bit of content out there. They do charge at some of these sites. And so you want to collect as much content as you can. But again, you know, Al and I are just kind of giving you the tools that we want you to have for the course. And so as I navigate down through it a little bit more, here's some additional problems if you want. These are bonus. This is the textbook author. And so the author would put in, you know, all these different things that you can draw. You don't have to do all the math problems at the end of your math class book. It's the same way in our CAD class. They're there for you if you want, but we're just going to pull a couple of them each week for you to do. But that's why we buy the books, so that we don't have to do all the exercises. Here's the general design link. Yeah, it's got that. And then more exercises from the author. Just a ton of exercises here. And I'm not a big fan of these ones where they don't use pictures, you know, where they just tell you how to draw it. So the first few chapters is really just very textbook orientated. I don't do well with written instructions on how to draw. I do better on video instructions. All right, I'm going to go back to the main splash page, and then I'm going to pause this recording or stop the recording. Al, is there anything I might need to add to the recording before I stop it?
Just make sure about the dates they have to be handed into. Pardon me. Has to be handed back to us.
Yeah, you should be turning in your assignments. Okay, the first set of assignments is due here. So if you have not turned in the module 1, which is the first 5 plates, that's due. And then every week now you'll have a different module that's due. And so next week is 2, and then March 1st is 3. And then as you turn those drawings in, Al and I are grading them and returning them back to you.
And also, by the way, if on assignments that you turn in for some reason or other, you're not finished with it, if you have some problems with it, please hand that in also. You can do that and just put a notation onto it where it's comments and say, hey, Joe, hey, Al, don't grade this. Can you help me with this? Give me more explanation, whatever else. We will do that, then send it back to you.
That's right. And there's always a problem with this stuff now that the pandemic has hit and everything is kind of connected the way it is. But we'll fix it, you know, and that's sort of, you know, part of the troubleshooting in the times that we live in right now. It takes longer. You have to pull out a support ticket. You have to go through technical support, but get used to it because it's the way things are going to be for a while. And so we'll give you the time that you need to get those things troubleshooted. And in the meantime, we'll provide you plenty of other content to work on as well. All right, with that, I'm going to stop the recording and we're going to open things up for questions.